So recently I wrapped up my reading of the My Hero Academia manga, as well as finished Hunter x Hunter, which is an anime that, believe it or not, I used to think looked basic and was surely overrated. Lo and behold, upon giving it a chance, I realised my utter hubris and am honestly beyond impressed by how heavily I slept on it. Both were an absolute blast, with gripping stories and impressively well thought out worlds. However, there was a common element in both that stuck out to me. Spoiler warning for both manga, as I'll be discussing events that occur later on in My Hero Academia, as well as briefly touching upon and using imagery from other manga, including Naruto and the final arc of Demon Slayer. In both stories, the main supporting characters, Killua and Shoto, share a common trait in the fact that they both have an evil sibling. Though in Killua's case, it's more like an entire family of evil siblings. This isn't the first time I've noticed this trope, and it certainly isn't exclusive to My Hero Academia and Hunter x Hunter. In fact, the evil sibling archetype is a common trope in storytelling as a whole, in both Eastern and Western media. We all know of famous characters like Scar from The Lion King, Loki from Marvel Comics, alongside other well-known characters like Virgil from Devil May Cry and Azula from Avatar The Last Airbender, to name a few. All these characters and the role that they play in each of their own stories fall into this trope. I've been watching anime for a long time now, and what's interesting about how this trope is portrayed in anime specifically is that it tends to always be the eldest child who is depicted as either an adversary or tragic character, and more often than not, both. But why is this the case, and what exactly is trying to be conveyed? The origins for this heavily used trope date all the way back to the Bible, through the story of Cain and Abel in the book of Genesis. In the Bible, Cain and Abel are the first two sons of Adam and Eve, the first man and first woman. Cain, the older brother, was a farmer, growing crops and grains, whilst Abel, the younger brother, was a shepherd, in charge of taking care of the animals. The brothers were taught that in order to express gratitude to God, each brother should offer a worthy sacrifice. Cain offers his produce from the ground, whilst Abel offers the firstborn of his flock of lamb. Upon making their offerings, God was favourable towards Abel's offering and held no regard for Cain's. The reason for this is never explicitly specified, though it is often interpreted as a matter of attitude, sincerity, and quality. Cain, consumed by jealousy and anger over God's favour towards his brother over himself, led Abel into the field and killed him, the first murder. As a result, Cain is banished from Eden and cursed to wander, the ground on which he works to never again yield strength unto him, yet also marked so that none may harm him and ensure that he lives on, resulting in both a blessing and a curse. It's a haunting story, so emotionally charged and influential that it acts as a template for sibling conflict and many of the themes associated with it, such as jealousy, favoritism, betrayal of familial bonds, and the lasting consequences that come with such acts. It's a story that continues to surface again and again under new guises. One of these new guises, surprisingly enough, is found in My Hero Academia, through what is personally my favourite aspect of the entire series, the story of Shoto Todoroki, Endeavor, and Darby, Toya Todoroki.
Well, allow me! The past never dies. You will reap everything you've sown! Enji Todoroki! Let's fall together! Come and dance with me in hell, won't you? Well, speak up, Dad!
In the world of My Hero Academia, roughly 80% of the population possesses a unique, genetic superhuman ability known as a quirk, each varying in form and power, turning the world into a comic book-esque society. In My Hero Academia, quirks are believed to be the next step in human evolution, and as a result, the value of your quirk heavily influences your standing in society. Endeavor is Japan's #2 hero, known for his powerful fire quirk. Early in his career, he determined he would never be able to surpass the #1 hero, All Might, and chose to start a family in order to create an offspring with a quirk that accounts for his own weaknesses, with the ultimate goal of raising his child to surpass himself, as well as All Might. Through a taboo process known as a quirk marriage, Endeavor married into the Himura family, known for their powerful ice quirks. Together, Endeavor and his wife Rei had Toya, their firstborn child. From the moment he gained his quirk, Toya was trained relentlessly by Endeavor, having inherited a stronger form of Endeavor's own Hellflame quirk. Toya was a bright and energetic boy, who like his father wanted to be a hero and became obsessed with the goal of surpassing All Might. He wanted nothing more than to make his father proud. Tragically, though Toya's quirk was powerful, he began to sustain injuries through its use. It was later discovered that though he had inherited his father's fire, he unfortunately inherited his mother's composition, a body resistant to freezing temperatures, necessary for an ice quirk. Toya's body was unable to effectively accommodate the intense heat given off through his flames, and he was subsequently deemed a failure, despite his great efforts and desire to succeed in his father's shared goal. Endeavor and Rei would have 2 more children, both of whom were deemed failures, having only inherited their mother's ice quirk. In a desperate attempt to prove his father wrong, Toya continued to relentlessly train on Sokoto Peak, growing unstable as he grew indifferent to the harmful effects as he attempted to replicate his father's signature moves, desiring only his father's acknowledgement and proof that he wasn't a failure, proof that he mattered. He ignored the concerned words of his younger sister, who cared so much for his well-being. Through the hope and promise instilled in him through his father, and the revelation he may be unable to achieve his dreams, Toya's worldview and outlook on life began to warp, and he became uncertain of his worth and why he existed despite what life still had to offer him. Developing severe insecurity and low self-esteem, he began to cry out of frustration and despair each night, often attempting to find comfort in his younger brother Natsuo, who inadvertently sidelined Toya as he grew tired of Toya's complaining, sadly unable to fully understand his pain. Eventually, Rei gave birth to Shoto, who possessed the quirk Endeavor desired, inheriting the perfect duality and equilibrium of both fire and ice. The effects of his abusive household at such a young age and the revelation of his brother Shoto drove Toya to lash out against his family and attack Shoto. As Toya continued to train on Sokoto Peak, he ignores his mother's encouraging words urging Toya that he is his own person and can choose his own path, snapping at her as he instead begins to resent her, considering her at fault for his condition as he became aware of the nature of his birth as a product of a quirk marriage, with Rei essentially selling herself off to Endeavor due to her family's financial hardship and enabling his father. Toya, considering himself and his siblings in his eyes as a product of not love but greed, insists to her that she's the one who needs help. Time and time again, Toya would beg his father to join him on Sokoto Peak, only to be shut down and punished for training against his will. Later, at age 13, Toya's quirk evolved, becoming stronger, crying out of pure joy at the discovery, urging his father to once again visit Sokoto Peak to see the discovery. Toya waited, only for his father to never arrive. As a result, Toya suffered a severe mental breakdown and lost control of his quirk, incinerating himself in the process. 3 years later, Toya would wake in a mysterious underground clinic in the body of a 16-year-old, but his mind still stuck in that moment from Sokoto Peak. Disfigured and weak, he was once again told he was a failure. Despite it all, his first thoughts were of home, wanting to apologise for worrying his family. Upon returning home, however, he is met with the realisation that his death seemingly doesn't matter to his father as he continues to train his brother Shoto, his family having seemingly moved on. Once again affirming to himself that he is worthless, he snaps, losing his sanity. Toya abandons himself and becomes Darby, a pyromaniac hell-bent on destroying his father's life as his father did his own. One of My Hero Academia's most dangerous and influential villains, as well as primary adversary to both Endeavor and Shoto. There is a clear relation between the Todoroki family and the story of Cain and Abel. Darby, a clear stand-in for Cain, falls from grace as a result of Endeavor's favour towards Shoto. Shoto, a stand-in for Abel, who God looked favourably upon, and Endeavor, father and mentor to both Darby and Shoto, a stand-in for God. As previously mentioned, in anime it tends to be the older sibling who acts as either a tragic character, an adversary, or in many cases both, whilst the younger sibling is often depicted as the hero, the protagonist of the story. The elder sibling often behaves as the status quo, reflecting their family's expectations or even generational trauma, and the younger sibling's journey becomes that of breaking free from the past. This is due to factors including the typical shonen formula of overcoming your obstacles, often depicted as the underdog younger sibling hero who must grow and overcome a stronger adversary, typically the elder brother, and the fact that there is a distinct power imbalance present. Older siblings are usually stronger, more experienced, and often more knowledgeable than the younger sibling, making them a formidable opponent for the inexperienced sibling, especially early on in the story, setting up a David and Goliath dynamic in which the younger sibling must grow to overcome the older sibling. You have characters like Illumi Zoldyck, someone who has taken too well to their role and acts as an imposing force within the Zoldyck family, who the younger sibling Killua is threatened by and must overcome despite differing values. Instead of a force of encouragement for Killua, he's a source of fear he wants to escape from. There are many factors as to why the elder sibling is depicted as an adversary, though the most interesting to me stems from the challenges and societal pressures they face. It's important to note that despite this trope being common in storytelling within a variety of cultures, the cultural context to which it is applied often leads to distinct narrative patterns, such as those present between depictions of this trope in anime and Western adaptations. Think back on the characters previously mentioned in the video: Scar, Loki, Virgil, and Ursula. Try and spot the outlier amongst them. If you answered Virgil, you're correct. All of these characters, with the exception of Virgil, are younger siblings and are of Western origin, whilst Virgil, elder twin to Dante, is a character of Asian origin, being a character from a peak Japanese video game series. Typically in Western adaptations, the younger sibling acts as the villain. This is a result of the differing familial values of Asia and the West, with the West valuing individuality and stories often focusing on self-made identities and rejecting inherited roles, opposed to Asia, which typically values a more hierarchical and duty-bound family system stemming from Confucianism. In Asian cultures, the eldest child, in particular the eldest son, is expected to carry the family name, inherit the responsibilities of their parents, and set an example for the younger siblings. This burden often leads to internal conflict within the eldest, as meeting these expectations can prove challenging, often requiring great sacrifice, and in many instances, those expectations can prove too much, especially when faced with feelings of rejection and isolation from society. Failure to meet these expectations can create deep conflict within themselves and their families. Darby is the perfect example of this. He's an eldest child lashing out against both the world and his family as a result of his failure to meet the expectations of both his father and, consequently, himself. There's no doubt that the primary reason this trope is so effective is due to simply how emotionally confronting it is. To see two siblings at odds in such a manner is heartbreaking, and to watch someone whose role is to guide and protect seemingly lose their way and betray that role subverts our expectations and can make for an incredibly complex narrative, especially when the meaning behind the conflict stems from a deep resentment of the other, or from a much greater, initially misunderstood, act of love. As the eldest child myself, I've often felt as if I was somewhat of a test dummy to my family. Though not intended, it certainly feels that way. This is a common feeling amongst other eldest children, as these values sort of come naturally with the role, and are present in all cultures. As the eldest, you're the first to get hit with pretty much everything in life. It seems cool at the start, being bigger and stronger than your siblings, first to get access to the front seat of the car, your parents seem to focus on you more, but as you get older, you start to realise that being the eldest can actually be pretty hard sometimes. Something I wish I had as I'm entering my third year of university, and subsequently the workforce soon enough, is that I had an older brother to show me the way. Recently, I've often been left wondering, did I make the right decision to go to university? Pick the right degree? How am I going to achieve my goals? How am I going to make up for the sacrifice my parents made for me? Can I? Am I setting a good example for my younger siblings? How can I make life easier for them, and how am I going to do that? What can I do to help them achieve their goals? Am I making the correct choices in life? Am I even a good older brother? And these are all questions I'm going to have to figure out for myself. I've come to develop a great understanding and appreciation of characters like Darby, Illumi, Itachi, Kokushibo and their stories as I try to navigate my own. It's an experience I feel a lot of elder siblings can relate to, and it's what inspired me to make this video. Running headfirst into life without a solid blueprint can be challenging. It can leave you prone to crash and burn. But it's getting back up and moving forward that really counts, and that's the role we play. Some take to it better than others, and we didn't choose it, but it's the role we were given, and if I can at least show my siblings what not to do, and give them a clearer path, I've done my job. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.